It's 28 minutes past 11. Good morning. You are listening, of course. Do you know what I said? I apologise for saying this the last time, and I've just gone back and said it. Anyway, it's Nihal here on the BBC Asian Network, as if you didn't know. All right. Next up, we're talking about Amena Khan. Now, do you know about her? Well, she was the first hijab-wearing woman to feature in a hair care campaign by L'Oreal, presumably because she's worth it. But just days after the campaign launched, Amena Khan stepped down from it after criticism over a series of anti-Israel tweets she wrote in 2014. Should she have stepped down? Do you think as a model her political views shouldn't matter? Or do you think, given she was in an advertising campaign that's all about diversity and inclusion, that it does matter that she had previously spoken out against an entire country and its people? We've tried to get Amena on the show, but she hasn't yet responded. So let's now speak to Arifur Rahman, who's a secular humanist blogger. Arif, good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think?
Well, I saw the news a few days ago when it was circulating in social media. And when I saw it, I just thought, originally when I saw the news that L'Oreal has chosen and kind of trying to promote this hijab-wearing icon, then I thought, okay, this is one more, Saudis and Qataris are trying to use PR to normalize, the hijab and what it stands for. And then a few days later, I saw the news that she had to step down because of some previous remarks, which are deemed as anti-Semitic. So I thought, okay, I didn't realize that she has said those things, but it didn't surprise me. And I was speaking to a friend earlier, past few days, and she was asking me whether or not I think that she should have been stepping down, or if someone actually made her step down. So that's what the discussion is kind of surrounding, and I think it's a fully commercial decision that L'Oreal took to use a hijab-wearing woman and to trying to address or access that particular, I should say, demography in their particular view and to boost sales. But it looks like it has backfired in some way. I think commercial companies like L'Oreal and other commercial companies who are approached by other public relations entities appointed by Qataris and Saudis to promote this image of Muslims who has a specific brand or insignia wearing, like women would be wearing a hijab, men should be wearing a specific Islamic dress. It's a identity promoting exercise, but commercial companies should take note that.
Not a diversity promoting exercise.
No, it's not. Diversity means, it goes back actually towards this multiculturalism and fetishizing of hijab. And what is diversity? If we look at England at this time, the diversity would, in this particular context, would mean, for example, the different nationality, different ethnic backgrounds. And when you talk about ethnic background, there are so many of them. And Muslim is actually not an ethnic background in any kind. It's not even a race, although some people try to class it as a race. So why my concern, and as a humanist blogger, I try to promote humanism, which means everybody should be equal, or at least we should not do anything to make somebody feel separated, and Islam does that very well these days. At least the more structured Saudi-led Wahhabi type of Islam, which means women and men growing up in a particular family and particular society would then be seen.
Well, if this was a Wahhabi school of Islam underpinning what Amena Khan was doing, that would be ironic, considering they wouldn't approve of her A, wearing makeup, B, showing her face, C, being in a modelling campaign doing both of those things.
True. I mean, if it was 2 years ago, I'm sure this would not happen. I mean, what has happened past few, I would say, over the year, and it's all connected. I mean, what's been happening in America, Donald Trump coming in, and then what's been happening in Saudi Arabia, the power shift. and also the recent protest in Iran. You have seen images of women taking their hijab off, and that iconic small video of a woman taking off her hijab, and not only that, she put it on a stick and she was waving it as a sign of disrespect. And this goes completely against what the Saudis and Qataris were trying to build, the hijab as a modesty icon, as something to be respected. And a lot, generations after generations of young women has taken hijab as a sign of respectable, attire. But this has been reversing past few months, past year or so. So now, obviously, the Islam always have lived by evolving, and it's now has become slightly more moderate, I would say. And this work that L'Oreal was trying to do is because L'Oreal and other commercial, cosmetics manufacturing firms obviously invest heavily on the image of a woman a specific type of image, like the one that we sarcastically call plastic, and I know.
Sorry, just to cut you short there. So you see nothing positive in this image of Amena Khan modelling for L'Oreal? You see something quite insidious in it.
Well, I mean, Amena Khan, obviously, she's not on her own. They're from England. There has been a specific type of celebrities being created. Also, in America, we have seen Linda Sarsour and people like her who are part of a global conglomerate who promotes this kind of identity politics that Muslim women and men should be, identified everywhere whenever they're out. They should not be kind of included in like general population, where an Indian, for example, a Hindu or any other religious people don't really have to wear. I mean, obviously we have the Sheikhs and some of the Jews have to wear, some Orthodox ones, the attire, but most of the secular Jews don't really care. Most of the secular Sikhs also don't care. But Muslims, obviously, it looks like if you are a Muslim and if you are a pious one, you have to prove something to the society. So I obviously.
So you don't approve of her being modelling this in a hijab in the first place, clearly.
Yeah. I mean, who am I to approve?
Well, wait a minute. Don't listen. Don't sit on the fence on it. You've been very clear that you don't approve of this. You've been very clear in everything that you've said up until this point. So when it's put in very stark words to you, you don't approve. Yeah. There's probably not a great opportunity for you to back away from the words you've just been saying for the last 10 minutes.
No, I'm just trying to be polite. I mean...
don't.
I actually
just
don't...
Just be honest.
I value the importance of people having their own opinion and what they want to do. But if I strongly say that, Amina, you should not do this, I would never say that to her. But if you ask that, as I don't know her background, she could be Bangladeshi origin, she could be Pakistani origin, but as a Bangladeshi, British Bangladeshi, I mean, I was not born here, but I'm a British now. I still value the culture that I was born in, which is definitely not had any mention of hijab in our country. But it's a phenomenon that we've seen in the last 20 years or so.
Just to be clear, sorry, Arif, but you take issue with the fact that companies like L'Oreal would use a hijab as almost like a catch-all symbol of multiculturalism. So as we put a hijab in there, then that means that we are promoting diversity, and you find that problematic. Would I be right in suggesting that?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I started that from the very beginning, that the definition of diversity should not include hijab, because hijab,
Well, why should, by the very definition of diversity, it should include everything, including a hijab?
Yeah, but then, as I said, it's a brand that has not come to this state of its prominence by just being evolving naturally. It has been given steroid. And that's what I have an issue with. And it's like it's not only Saudis, Qataris funding, but also throughout the globe, the establishment supporting hijab and there's big chunk of media.
There's no mention that the Saudis or the Qataris had anything to do with Amena Khan being a model for L'Oreal, is there? I mean,
not directly, not directly, but there is a huge activity going on. I was watching this documentary BBC was doing.
Sorry, Arif, just stop for a second. I want to bring Sunny Hundal in, editor of Barfi Culture, to join this conversation. Sunny, good morning.
Morning, Nihal. How you doing?
Good to speak to you, as always. She stepped down after these anti-Israel tweets that she wrote 4 years ago. Was she right to have done that?
No, I don't think that they should have pushed her out, which I think is more likely the case. I don't have any idea why this is suddenly turned into a referendum on the hijab. At the end of the day, Amena Khan is a very well accomplished stylist and blogger. You know, she's got like 400,000 subscribers on YouTube and 600 on Instagram, 600,000. And I think the reason why they picked her is because she is not just a diverse name. She's a hijabi, but the fact that actually she is promoting products to her own audiences, and L'Oreal wanted to get into that. You know, it's like
that makes sense.
Promotion in one way.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But do you really want someone who you are putting forward because you want to say, look how diverse we are as a company and we respect all people, someone who tweeted things such as calling Israel a sinister state, an illegal state, saying that it's a country full of child murderers, saying that Israel is accused of torture, murder, rape, genocide, also falsely claiming that Orthodox Jews themselves condemn the actions of Israel, as if she knows every single Orthodox Jew around the world. I mean, is that someone you really want fronting a campaign that, you know, where you're lauding it as diversity?
I don't see what her political views, specifically in this case, which related to a time when Israel was bombing the hell out of Gaza, have got to do with what her views are on beauty. I think those two are very separate. So
you would okay. So equally, then you presumably didn't see any reason why Henry Bolton should have been in trouble for racist text that his girlfriend sent, or anything that Boris Johnson has said in the past, or. Well,
funnily enough, Nihal, I actually was on BBC London at the time defending Henry Bolton and saying that I don't think he should be fired. Frankly, everyone knows that UKIP is a racist party, so that wasn't new news. In this case,
well, they would certainly say they aren't a racist party, and they would say that we are the only party that says that if you've ever been a member of a far right organisation, you're not allowed to join UKIP. So that would be their defence to that argument, which I've heard.
I'm sure that's true. Look, at the end of the day, I wouldn't choose the words that Amena did, but I would understand why at that time I was pretty angry too when Israel was bombing Gaza and there were a lot of loss of innocent lives at that time.
This was only 4 years ago, Sonny. I mean, Toby Young was hounded out of it for things that he did, 9 years ago?
My point, I'm not saying that she is too young to say that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying she was angry, obviously, because at that time bombing was going on. I wouldn't choose the words that she did, but I don't think it's racist to be critical of a country as such, whether it's Israel, whether it's India, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's the United States. And I think it's wrong to say, oh, you've criticized this country, therefore you're racist and we can't have you on our, we can't have anything to do with you. I mean, there are loads of Sikhs who criticize India, for example, all the time for what it does.
And you would expect that Indian companies would not use them in advertising campaigns.
Indian companies don't have to use them if they don't want to, but I would.
Well, this is the whole point of this conversation.
No. You're mixing two things. Firstly, L'Oreal didn't pick Amena Khan because of them being an Israeli company or a Jewish company, but they also didn't pick her because she was Muslim. They picked her because she was hijabi. She's well known for.
Yes, but weren't they? They were talking about diversity and inclusion, weren't they? I mean, clearly that's part of the reason for why they chose Amena Khan. She speaks to a completely different, diverse audience that they probably don't have as much contact with as they should have.
With Israeli politics, I don't understand.
Sorry? Because it's not very inclusive to say that a country's full of child murderers, is it? Well, it's not very inclusive, is it? To call an entire group of individuals an illegal state. So to call every Israeli essentially an illegal individual living in an illegal state.
I think you're making a jump there. You could.
No, I'm not. I'm repeating back to you exactly what she wrote, Sonny.
What she said, that all the Israelis in.
She called Israel an illegal state. What does that say if you're an Israeli about how she feels about you, do you think?
Well, I guess she feels like what they do since 1965 have broken a lot of UN conventions. So I'm not going to go into her head and say this is what she feels like or this is what.
But how would you feel if you were an Israeli? If you are trying to be the face of an advertising campaign which is trying to promote inclusion and diversity, then presumably you have to be able to be held up in all regards as being someone who believes in inclusion and diversity, and calling a whole group of people, a whole state, illegal, probably, please tell me if I'm wrong, maybe it's the semantics of it, doesn't seem in keeping with the values of that, does it?
I mean, I disagree on this point, and I do think that there's a lot of people in this country. Okay, well, just take the example of Toby Young. You had a person who was specifically going for an educational role, saying some very vile things, which would never dream of saying in an educational context. And yet, senior members of this government were protecting him, defending him, saying this was just something that he said as a joke. This was just something that it's not really relevant to the role here. So you've got a very strong double standard here, where certain people, white, middle-class, posh men, are defended by this government, defended by the establishment. But as soon as you've got someone who's a minority who says anything vaguely controversial, then they are hounded out. So, for example, with L'Oreal, there was the other woman a few months back, I think, the trans woman who was, chucked out of the campaign because she had said something about white racism, structural white racism. And it's this idea that we are not allowed to have controversial opinions. And if we have a controversial opinion, then suddenly you are not pushing diversity. But if you're a conservative party
you seem to be
person pushing education, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah,
and
okay.
The government ministers will defend you.
Well, I find it wait a minute, Sonny, stop. You made that point. I find it slightly odd that you see a difference between Toby Young being put in a position where education is at the heart of what he's supposed to be doing, and him sending out offensive tweets, and Amena Khan, who's put as the face of a diverse and inclusive campaign. And yet, if you were an Israeli, presumably you'd feel incredibly offended by the things that she has said about your state, calling the country that you live in, and presumably the country you love, as a country full of child murderers. And you think that that's compatible with a campaign that's supposed to be about inclusion and diversity?
Nihal, I think this is a bit of a reach here. She was not
really
taken.
Really?
Well, I'll explain. Let me explain.
Please do.
Okay. When Toby Young is being asked to head up a department which is focused on education, then his views on education, then his views on what he said in the media, as well as on social media.
No. Let's stop talking about Toby Young. Let's stop talking about Toby Young.
I know. I'm explaining my point. Let me just explain my point.
So
what he's saying is relevant to his role. In this case, what
controversy
he said 4
over
years ago
fake
about
news,
Israel in that context
misinformation,
is not
and
relevant to the role.
Is it inclusive and is it championing diversity? Is it Sonny? Is it don't be so. I mean, this isn't more than just about a beauty campaign. These are values that they're trying to put forward as a corporate company about, as I keep saying, and you keep ignoring, inclusivity and diversity.
No, please. No. This wasn't about inclusivity and diversity as much as L'Oreal would like to claim.
Oh, okay. So wait a minute. You claim to say, I don't know what's exactly going on in Amena's head, but you claim to know exactly what's going on in L'Oreal's head, do you? That's a bit arrogant.
I'm saying that Amena was picked because she is a very presentable and a very popular blogger.
So her hijab had nothing to do with it.
Reach that market. It's a straightforward.
So her hijab had nothing to do with that.
Weird about it.
So her hijab had nothing to do with that.
I'm sure it did.
Right. Okay. And then what do you think? And why do you think that her hijab had something to do?
L'Oreal is not in the business of being nice to people. L'Oreal is in the business of selling hair products. Right?
To as many people as possible, to show that it is as diverse and an inclusive company. So if it didn't have someone with a hijab, if it didn't have a single model with a hijab on it, it would be accused of being not diverse and not inclusive. So it then goes and gets someone who is very well known in that world with a hijab, therefore promoting the fact that it believes in inclusivity and diversity.
No. Promoting the fact that they also want to sell products to women.
Why can't they? They're a business. You need to take. Come on, don't be ridiculous. Of course, they're a business, but businesses are allowed to have values as well, Sonny. You are aware of that.
If that was the case, then they would be a lot more diverse long ago, right? There's only recently that suddenly...
Okay, so because you haven't been diverse beforehand, you're not allowed to be diverse now. Is that your argument?
You can be diverse now, but don't tell me they'll suddenly find a conscience. Come on. In 2018, they suddenly found conscience.
So this is the classic problem, right? That as soon as you become diverse, someone like you turns up and goes, "Oh, well, you should have been diverse before." I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? So there's no evolution, no progress because people like you.
Look, I welcome this campaign and the fact that it wasn't just Amena, but it's also Kaushal, who is another well-known beauty blogger. There's Neelam Gill on there, the Indian model. The fact that these people are there, I think, is good. Yeah, but let's not pretend that they did this because they've suddenly developed a huge conscience. They did this.
No, they've developed and evolved, Sonny, as businesses are allowed to do.
They found someone who is good at selling products to those communities, and they've said, "Oh, this is a fantastic fit."
Yes, diverse, different community.
When it turned out that person was controversial and she had some opinions in the past, they dropped her. Now, if this was a person, for example, another popular example used in the media, Gal Gadot, who is known for promoting the IDF, which has killed loads of innocent people in recent years, there's no problem there. No one in Hollywood is saying we should get rid of Gal Gadot because she is affronting for the IDF. So, it's very political in terms of who gets criticized and hounded out for their political views and who doesn't.
Okay, all right. Arifur, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of I know you are about to wrap up. So basically, as I started at the very beginning, that this was a commercial decision made by L'Oreal to kind of trying to reach, in their vision, a segment that they thought is not being reached. That's it. But end of the day, when this controversies surfaced, they had to make a goodwill image value decision, because I think what they'd realized is that their goodwill image of L'Oreal was being tarnished because of this corrosive discussion, and that's why they had to, I think they politely asked her, give her some sort of hint, and she stepped down. Otherwise, it would have been looked bad on other ways. So that's my summary of this whole situation, and I definitely don't agree with your definition of diversity, because if you want to really include people and you think that it was only focusing on white people, then they could always bring in other race and ethnicity. But hijab is not a definition of diversity. It's actually
it's not your definition. Don't be so arrogant to say that it's not a definition. It's not your definition.
It's a lot of people. It's a progressive definition. I mean, hijab stands for oppression, and in
your mind it does, and you are oppressing women who choose to wear it by telling them that they are being oppressed.
I'm not just an individual person. I mean, there is a whole...
But you have your own agenda because you're a secularist and a humanist. So you have your own agenda, which is against women having the choice to wear what they want.
Humanism includes everybody.
No, well, you don't want to include everybody. You want to tell a woman what she can and can't wear.
Well, because she's already been told by her religion that you should and you must wear this. I mean, you have heard about it.
What if she chooses? What if she chooses?
Well, have you seen what happens when women decides to, take it off? They get so much punishment.
What, every woman?
Well, in UK, for example, if a woman who's part of a culture which is conservative and she decides to take it off, she would be ostracized. I work with groups who
and she shouldn't be, and that's wrong. But that's not the same thing as saying that every woman who wears one is oppressed.
Well,
and that the symbol of oppression is a woman that wears a hijab. There are plenty of women. There are plenty of women wearing hijabs listening to BBC Asia Network now who would feel offended by what you have said.
I know they have been taught how to get offended by any criticism of this insignia that it was actually exported to them from the Middle East, and I have no idea why they're still big. Probably because they have not been, allowed to think otherwise.
Okay, so not only are you feel that they're oppressed, you feel to patronise them by selling to them that they're not clever enough to to understand why they're wearing it.
I'm sure they're clever enough. They may not be just brave enough actually to break this social structure that was put on.
What if they, Arifur, they actually want to wear it and they feel comfortable in it and it makes them feel good? What about that then? How does that play out with you?
Well, as I said in the very beginning, I wouldn't go and speak to Amena saying, why are you wearing hijab? Take it off. No, we would talk about hijab, in a constructive way so that people who has an open mind...
By telling her she's being oppressed?
We would make an argument that, yes, hijab is a identity, and it's actually an instrument of oppression in a lot of Islamic countries, and also the society, the silos that multiculturalism has built, and those silos are actually we couldn't get to that point, but the whole silos were actually governed by the mosques and the communities, so-called communities that was built, have this kind of norm that if you are a Muslim you should, and if somebody takes it off, at least these days this has become slightly more normal, but before in the last 20 years or so, if you are seen as society, there are a lot of things you won't do in a society which is more conservative for the fear of ostracization. And as I said, I work with so many ex-Muslims and other faith people who leave their religion, and they get ostracized by not only by the society but also by their own parents. And horrible things happen because women decide to take it. So you can always say that this is a choice, and I know this is a kind of a PR line that Linda Sarsour and they tries to promote, but the reality is far darker. I don't know if BBC actually does a good job of discussing those, but I'm sure
we've done it. We've discussed it more times than you have. That's for certain. And we've had plenty of discussions about the hijab.
I've been to this show multiple times, and BBC is widely criticised for actually taking a very
taking a view different to yours.
No, that promoting religion actually, humanism,
Why? Sorry. I mean, we're going off topic. Sunny Hundal, thank you for joining us. Because we're going off topic, but why shouldn't the BBC not promote but discuss all thought? Why do you feel that only your opinion matters?
Because demographically, Britain has got a large.
So you do feel only your opinion matters?
I'm telling you about statistics. Around 50 or more % has now declared that they don't really care about religion. But
so does that mean that the minority should be oppressed?
Let me finish my comment, please. So when it comes to discussing religion in, for example, BBC segments, humanism and non-religion don't really get that much share. It's a fact, and
it's not a fact, Arifur. It's not a fact, because there are plenty of religious people who accuse the BBC of being secular and of being atheist and of being anti-religion. So unfortunately, Arif, you're not on the right. You're not on your opinions. You have a right to your own opinions. But you don't have a right to your own facts, as Obama quoted.
This is a fact. The UK humanists have actually published papers on this based on research. I can send it to you. I can tweet to you later on. You can have a good read, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sure it'll be riveting. Arifur, thank you very much indeed for joining us today on the BBC Asian Network, even though we did go vastly off topic on the subject. Right, okay. You are listening to Nihal here on the BBC Asian Network. Right, we're having a quick conversation, are we, about alcohol. When you buy and drink alcohol, you